doing the top 10 teachings of Brachos, Daf Yud Ches. We're going to start with number one. Can an onen, the mourner who isn't yet mourning the shiva because it's between the time of the death and the burial? That's when the person, the relatives, are called an onen. It's more intense than the shiva in some respects and less intense in other respects. First, let me just read the Mishnah to you. Mishnah says, Misha Meso, this is on Yud Zayin Amud Beis. Misha Meso Mutal Lefanov Pater Mikriya Shema Min Tefillah Minat Tefillin. Somebody who has one of the 7 relatives that one is obligated to sit shiva for or mourn is not obligated to read the Shema, daven, put on tefillin, mikol mitzvahs hamuris b'Torah, all mitzvahs in the Torah. It's not actually all mitzvahs, it's all positive time-bound mitzvahs. No sehamita v'chlufein v'chlufehen. The people who hold on to the bed, that was what they used to use instead of a coffin, or the ones who would relieve the carrying group and a third group as well, because either as a sign of honor, respect, or if it was a distance from where the mace was to the burial place, you would need to have rotations of different people carrying the coffin / bed. There were 2 groups besides for the group actually carrying. The group in front of the mita would be the group that would be next to carry. That's how I think Rashi explains it. The one that was following the coffin would be a group that already had carried it, but they would still potentially carry it a second time after the ones in front would take their turn. The ones in front that have the need to carry it, they are pater from reciting Shema and, of course, davening. Everyone's pater from davening in that setup. Those who are behind the coffin, even though there's a good chance that they will have to also carry it a second time, they're still chayiv because they don't have the anxiety since they already had the opportunity to carry it already. Elu ve'elu paturim min atfila. Both don't have to daven, those groups. Kavru asames v'chazru im yicholon lahaskla v'ligmar ad shlo yagiu l'shura yaschilu v'mlav lo yaschilu. Then it talks about certain customs that we still have in some form today. The formation of 2 lines, and it was called the row or the line, and the avelim would walk through the row, and sometimes there would be many people deep each of the rows. Anyway, so the Mishnah goes on to say when those in the row can say the Shema, meaning if they were not in the front row, they were kind of back behind the front row. He says, "Apnimim paturim v'chitzoniim chayavin." Okay, I want to do a machlokus here in Rashi Tosfos about if an onen can decide they want to do the mitzvah. Rashi says, where's that Rashi? I'll find it eventually. The onen mivarech. Oh, that's why. It is, I think it's on the onen mivarech. Okay. So last Rashi on the page. Onen mivarech, the onen doesn't have to make a bracha. Ein tzarich levarech birchas hamotzi. Ve'enim mizamen. Ein tzarich levarech birchas hamazon. They don't have to do the after blessing. And it must be on the next page. That's why I can't find the Rashi that I'm looking for. Anyway, I'm not finding it. Oh, okay. He doesn't need to make a bracha. Tosfos is going to take that literally, that he could if he wants to, and the same he would extrapolate that if he wanted to bench, he could. If he wanted to read the Shema, he could. In other words, all of these laws of what an onen doesn't do is that an onen doesn't have to do it, but if an onen felt like doing it, he would be able to do. Tosfos takes issue with it, and he quotes extensively from the Yerushalmi to show you that it's not kavod hames. The Yerushalmi gives two reasons of why you wouldn't be able to do a mitzvah even if you wanted to. One is it's just disrespectful for the dead. And the other reason is because the dead person needs somebody, can't take care of itself, can't carry its own load, and it's the responsibility of the mourners to arrange, and therefore when you're preoccupied in doing mitzvahs, which take a long time to do, or could take your attention, you're going to end up not really tending to the mace. Okay, so we're going to continue with the second teaching of the top 10, which is the story of Rabbienu Tam, whose sister passed away, and I underlined it here. The story is as follows. There's a story that the sister of Rabbienu Tam passed away b'Shabbos, on Shabbos, v'hodiu lo b'matzah Shabbos, and they let Rabbienu Tam know on Saturday night, b'ir acheres, in another town, meaning Rabbienu Tam didn't live in the same town or village as his sister. And that Saturday night, v'achal basar b'shasa yain, he ate meat, he drank wine, v'amar, and he said, kivin sheyesh lebal, yes, shesh la bal, since she, his sister, had a husband, Rabbienu Tam had a brother-in-law, shachaya b'kfurasa, that the husband is obligated in her burial. Eno aser b'basar v'yayin, he doesn't become forbidden, meaning Rabbienu Tam is not forbidden from eating meat and drinking wine, which, by the way, somebody sitting Shiva can have meat and wine. It's the onen who we're stricter with in that regard. They can't have meat and wine. I'll tell you the reason in a moment. The fact that he was in another city might not be of consequence, even if he was in the same city. The underlying rationale was that he had a brother-in-law who was responsible to take care of the kvura, of the burial of his wife, and therefore Rabbienu Tam felt that this discharged his own obligation, and he felt that the mitzvahs of aninus, such as the requirement not to eat meat and drink wine, are a precaution against somebody getting caught up with regular things that would take away from their ability to function fully and properly in executing the details of the burial, organizing, making sure that there are people to there at the cemetery. There are all of the tahara. The tahara is done. The tachrichin are prepared and put on properly. I mean, there's a lot of details. Today we have professional institutions that handle many of these, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But even with all of those handlers and all of those institutions that are set up for transportation and for readying the mace and opening the grave and diggers, it's called a grave opening, and then everything there in place, it's still a lot of coordinating and give and take between the needs of the guests that are coming and the time frame and the schedule of both the I was going to say Riverside and Plaza. Those are the local funeral homes and the cemetery and other people, scheduling things and calling people, and so there's a lot here, and that leads me to number 3. But before because number 2 and number 3 are very connected. Number 3 is the Gemara is going to have a question, a seemingly contradictory thing to our mission is going to be reconciled. That our mission doesn't mean literally the lack of the obligation to daven, say Shema or Tefillin is only precipitated by being in the same room as the deceased. It's not about the proximity as much as it is the responsibility. And the language is Reb Ashi Omar Kivan Shumutal Oblakovro Kumutal Lefanav Dami. Once you are the one responsible to take care of the burial, it's as if it's in front of you. In other words, responsibility equals proximity. It's not about being in the same room per se. It's about what your role and your responsibility is. Being responsible to take care of a burial means you are not mechuyev b'mitzvahs. You don't have to read the Shema, say Kriya Shema, say Brachos, and other mitzvahs, say Sha'azman Grama. The question is, what does that mean today when you do have a Chevra Kadisha? If you call the Chevra Kadisha and you met with them and signed the paper that says that they are going to, and not just the Chevra Kadisha is only one small part of it. If you met with the funeral home director, who then contracts a Chevra Kadisha and makes sure that there'll be contracts the cemetery to make sure there's an opening, so to speak, are you then no longer responsible for the kvura because you've handed over to the professionals? And when would you then be able to eat meat, drink wine, put on tefillin, daven, say brachos? This really does get back to number 2, which is in the story of Rabbienu Tam. It would seem that you're at least able to eat meat and drink wine. Some people take that as more than just eat meat and drink wine, that you'd also be obligated in positive time-bound mitzvahs. So there's a machlokus rishonim, I believe it's the Rosh, if I'm not mistaken, that totally disagrees with Rabbienu Tam. And then there are machlokas of the poskim in the times of the Shulchan Aruch and even later until today. So basically, the answer to this question about what would you be mechuyev in mitzvahs after you did hand over the responsibility to a professional person would be one of 2 things. The question is, are you still responsible? Meaning, is that person, nobody's calling you, nobody's asking you to make decisions? Are you still preparing the eulogy, making sure the rabbi is told, updated of what he's going to be talking about? And many people I know involve the Riverside and Plaza, whatever your local funeral parlor home is, And it doesn't mean the work is over by any stretch of the imagination, both in coordinating the timing and who's speaking and who's coming and so much more. So the question is, just because you have some people in place to do some of the things, is that enough? And what if those people let you down? It's back to you then. Meaning, like, what happens if you're negotiating with them, or they come back at you and say, well, no, we don't want to do this, and you're going to have to do it this way. And you're like, well, then I'm not going to do it like that. And I have to go back to square one and find another company or another person to do that particular job. So that's a mitzvahstic question, meaning that's a question of what's the actual facts on the ground. How responsible is the organization that you gave it over to? If it is completely reliable and airtight, then it's not a mitzvahs question. It's just more a halachic question. Do we go like the people who seem to follow Rabbienu Tam that would say, then you would have to do mitzvahs. Again, it's one way of interpreting Rabbienu Tam. There's different ways of interpreting Rabbienu Tam, since he didn't specify what else he did or didn't do in the Tosfos. And the other shita would be that you would still be responsible to be an onen, not to eat meat or drink wine, and not to have to do those positive mitzvahs. Anyway, there would certainly be some exceptions, like putting on tefillin, because putting on tefillin is considered pi'er, is considered a pi'er chachava shalacha. It has to do with like being in a state of anguish. You wouldn't put on tefillin, and that's why even you'd ask a rav if there was an extended period of time in which a person was an onen and they really felt that everything was already taken care of. But definitely the first day, there's no question, everybody holds he wouldn't put on tefillin. Actually, I shouldn't say everyone, because there's always some way out shita, but I'm not aware of any shita that would say that. But that's number two. And number three, number four is what not to do in the cemetery. So the Gemara says the following. The Gemara is saying that if you're a shomer for the mace, there's certain things you don't have to do, right? Like talis, tefillin, kriya shema during that period. But the implication is if you're not a shomer, if you just happen to be wandering through a basic forest, it would be okay to, like, I don't know, have your talis and tefillin on, be reciting verses of the Torah. That's the implication. That's at least what the Gemara wants to say, and the Gemara says that's problematic. The Gemara says, "Avol mahalach basic verse low." The implications would be that if you were just walking in the synagogue, those prohibitions or wouldn't apply. But the Gemara says v'atanya. But we learned in the Brachos. Lo yahalachadim basic varas for tefillin b'rosho v'sefer tebezor. Don't walk in a cemetery with tefillin on your head and a sefer Torah in your arm, v'koreh, and study. And Tosha says it's even without a sefer Torah, even if you're just studying by heart, meaning you're just reciting verses without reading it from a scroll. Bim osakain over mishum loig l'rash charif oseu. If you do this, you violate a prohibition against insulting, it's like telling a poor person, like, like, too bad God couldn't be bothered looking into your issues. I guess he just doesn't care about you. And you could do that to dead people also by saying, look at you. You no longer could do the mitzvot. So doing mitzvos in their presence, learning Torah in their presence, is a violation of this prohibition of reminding them that it's too late for them. to fix their lives with mitzvahs. But the problem is this contradicts the earlier teaching that only when you're literally watching a dead body, like a shomer, when that's your responsibility, are you not supposed to do things like this. The Gemara answers a chiluk, a distinction, hasam toch arba amos hud aser, chutz la arba amos chayev. When we're talking about being in a cemetery, if you're right in front, within 4 cubits of the grave, then you don't do things like reading the Shema. But if you're a certain distance away, not that far, but outside of the 4 cubit range, then you could do things like recite the Shema. To Amar Mar, Meis Tofis Dal Amos L'Kriya Shema. As Mar stated, the master stated, that a dead body within the 4 Amos, you can't recite the Shema. And Hacha Chutz Dal Amos Nami Pater. But by the Shomer, even if you're 50 feet away, you still are Pater. Gufa Hamishamer Sameis Af Bishaino Meso Pater M'Kriya Shema Minat Tefillin. And it talks about if you're on a boat. And so we get into a little bit more the dinim of a shomer and the idea of akvarim by the shomer. But let's go on to number 5, which is the need to learn 4 times or 4 ways. The Gemara says, There's from the bottom towards the bottom of Yud Ches Amud Aleph and most of Yud Ches Amud Beis is a prolonged discussion about whether or not dead people know pretty much everything that's going on, or alternatively, some of them know a little tiny bit of what's going on, but generally speaking, don't really know what's going on, and that's a debate. And there's stories and proofs that are brought to try to mostly prove that they do know what's going on, and then those proofs are kind of questioned. So the story is that one rabbi has had his tzitzis, I guess, dragging either on the ground or over the tombstones, and another rabbi chastised him, saying this isn't right because the deceased shouldn't talk about us in a derogatory way, saying, look, these people are going to join us, but in the meantime, they're mocking us and cursing us by reminding us that we don't have mitzvahs to do. But the response in part is, and this is where I'm going to read, do dead people really know this much? There's a verse that says the dead don't know anything. Amarle, so the rabbi responded to that question, Im karisa lo shanisa, if you read, you haven't reviewed a second time. Im shanisa lo shilashta, if you did a second time, you didn't read a third time. Im shilashta lo pirshulach, lo pirshulcha. If you did do it a third time, you never really got the correct understanding. And the correct understanding is ki achaim yodim shimusu. It's really talking about people who are eternally alive, which are righteous. And here's the interesting thing, the paradoxical thing. A person who knows they're going to die and acts accordingly, meaning a person who counts every day and cherishes every moment and lives a moral life because they know there's an end to the physical life, and then at that point, there's going to be a din v'cheshbon. There's going to be a judge and a judgment and a schar v'onesh, a reward and punishment, and a Gan Eden and a Gehenim, and that the soul is eternal and starts living with those principles. That person who has that awareness will end up being alive forever, not physically. That person will die. They know they're dying. They will die. but the quality of their life will be an eternal quality, because their life is going to take on a meaning above and beyond just simple pleasure and existence and self-preservation, but it's going to take on meaning. So what the rabbi says is the verses that say that the dead don't know anything are not talking about dead people. It's talking about the walking dead. It's talking about the living people who, because they don't think about death, and they don't think about judgment, they don't think about heaven or hell, they don't think about the soul, they don't think about right or wrong really that much. So they're already dead. They're just like accidents of existence. They happen to be here. They're gonna do whatever by accident or whatever mikra. Whatever happens is going to happen. So that's not real life that we're talking about. That's not eternity. They're not connected to eternity. So that's the Gemara's answer. But I think for number 5, I think I wanted to make another point, which is so there's two ways of learning this thing about one rabbi responding to the other about learning it 3 times and then understanding it. But that's one way. The other way is, if you look closely, it's saying if you learned it like if you read it, meaning if you read, let's say, the Chumash, did you learn the Mishnah on it? And if you learned the Mishnah on it, did you learn the Gemara on it? And if you learned the Gemara on it, you didn't necessarily understand it, which means that the Gemara often describes what a child learns growing up. And it also says something like only one in, I don't know, maybe 10,000 or 1,000 children who enter into a cheder are going to come out, because like at every stage only a small amount, like 10% come out, and then so it ends up being like point something one, So it could also mean that you certain people learn, but you didn't. And this rabbi, there's 2 great rabbis talking to each other, but the question is, did you get to the tachlis? Did you get to the whole kavana of this difference between what life really is about? You can't be learning once or even twice or even 3 times if you didn't get the pirush, if you didn't get the meaning of it. So that's I wanted to share that. And number 6 is, I've already started sharing about it, the dead people that are alive and the living people that are dead. That's a big foundation in all of Kabbalah, also that concept of the living that are dead and the dead that are living, meaning a tzaddik in his or her lifetime is called, that, or even beyond their lifetime, is called alive, and a rasha, even in their life, is called dead. In other words, when we start being giving value to the spiritual life of a person over their physical life, and then we were talking about that in the earlier class about Yud Zayin, so I'll just kind of repeat some of that idea, which is there's a concept of a continuum from this world to the next world in the Rambam and in Sifrei Kabbalah and Chassidus, meaning you create a spiritual reality that you then experience in the Olam Emes, in the world of truth. And in that sense, when you start creating that reality right here, right now, a spiritual reality that goes over and above just the physical sensory reality, so you're already beginning to enter into Olam Haba, the Olam Emes. The world that is coming is the world that's here, but we're not aware of it, but you're already kind of there for the pre-sale. And so that's what this rabbi taught his colleague. Number 7 is a very wild story about a chosid who would spend Rosh Hashanah nights in the cemetery listening to dead people talk. The Gemara says, the Gemara keeps asking this question. We hear dead people know about this, know about that, and it keeps on answering, well, though that's not the rule, that's the exception. Like one, it talks about, I won't read it, but it says the dead are aware of something that happens to them. And the Gemara says, they know their own pain, but they don't know about other people. And then the Gemara questions that, and that's where we're going to come in. Vatanya, there was a chosid that gave a dinner, which is a relatively sizable amount of money, to a poor person on right before Rosh Hashanah in the years of famine, meaning he could ill afford that level of a gift to the poor because of the famine. Vihikni taso ishto. His wife, was fighting with him about it. V'halach v'lan b'beis hakfaris. He didn't know what to do. He had to leave the house. It got so heated, so he left and he went to sleep. I guess he didn't want to make other people too nervous about his marriage or gossip. So instead, he spent the night in the cemetery. So he heard two spirits, two ghosts, talking to one another, two deceased people. One woman, there were young women that had passed away, and one of them said to her friend, Let's go fly around, flit around. We'll hear from the other side of the curtain. That's an expression, right? That's in Gemara and Zohar and other places. What decrees, bad decrees, are going to be decreed on the world? Amrla chaverta ini chola. She said, the friend said, I can't. Anikfur Marcel Shalkanim. Elulchiat. I'm buried in a reed mat. Not really clear what that issue with the reed mat would be. Initially, I thought it meant something like, I'm kind of trapped in here because of this reed mat. Or it could also mean something like something to do with it's disrespectful to go out in that type of attire, so to speak. I'm not sure what it is, but it's a problem for this soul, this spirit, to be able to flit around with her friend. So, but she says, don't let me not being able to go accompany you stop you. You go out on your own. And whatever you hear, let me know. Come tell me. She flitted around. She came back and she told her friend, the friend that didn't fly, asked the other ghost, what did you hear from the inside, the other side of the curtain? I heard that there's you divide up the crop season or when you would sow for in the fields, and I heard that that's a particular time there's going to be a shidafon, some type of thing that will affect the crop and destroy them. So halach v'zar b'reviyah rishona. So this guy had information, heavenly knowledge. So he avoided that period and he planted before it. Shakol olim kulo nishtaf. Everybody else's crop was ruined. V'shelo lo nishtaf, but not his. Amalo ishto ema ishtakid shakol olim kulo laka v'shalach lo laka. Actually, so this happened twice. The saying, basically, this happened a bunch of times, and he would go there every Rosh Hashanah, and he'd hear this type of news of when it's going to be a bad time to plant, and then he would figure out to plant in a good time, and everybody was getting wiped out, and he was doing better and better. So you had this guy who all of a sudden is very successful, and his wife noticed that something is different, and she called him on it and said, what is going on? Why are you all of a sudden just what to do? I mean, this is, I know you for many years. So he had to tell her, and And one time she got into a fight with one of her neighbors, and that neighbor's daughter was one of those people that was those two girls that were buried in the cemetery. She was the one that was buried in the reed mat, and in the fight, this wife of this chosid yelled at this woman, "Yeah, you buried your daughter in a reed mat. What type of mother are you?" And the next Rosh Hashanah, when the chassid came, they went to sleep in the basic forest to hear what they would predict for that year for the crops. He heard one of them say, "We got to keep it quiet because the humans are already listening to us, so we can't talk about our stuff anymore." But the point the Gemara wants to make, it's a great wild story, is that they're fully aware of all things going on. The Gemara has a kind of an answer, which is maybe they do hear things not directly but indirectly in their spirit world. Somebody died and came up with the news and says, "Oh, by the way, your mother got insulted because I heard this fight and she insulted your mother about the way you've been buried." But it's not that these spirits themselves are listening into human conversation. So again, the machlokes, that debate of whether how much the dead people know, they definitely know something when it's told to them, but other things they may or may not know. So that's the debate in the Talmud. It's a very wild story. Well, there's a lot to say about that, but it's late at night. So we're going to go to number 8, which is this continuation of this Gemara. Has a story about Ziery, who talked to a dead person to find something. Tashma number 8. Come in here. Does Ziery have a mafkid? There was a hostess that he would leave money with, to be like somebody that it would hold onto his money. In the meantime, he went. When the time he come back, this woman had passed away. He went after her to the courtyard of death, meaning he entered into the spirit world to be able to talk to her. Amar la zuzehecha. He asked her, "Where's my money?" Amar, so she told him where it was. Okay. The question is, there's a prohibition in the Torah called Dorish el Mason, inquiring from the dead, and it's a prohibition to inquire from the dead because it's a common practice. We find it that King Shaul did it with Shmuel, and it's a prohibition. So how could Ziery do this? There's various answers, and I'm just trying to think of one of the simpler ones. One simple answer is you can't conjure up the dead with like hocus pocus things, with weird potions and bones and things like that. But if you just go and talk to them, then that would be different. Okay, interesting answer. Okay, let's do number 9, about why Levy wasn't let into the heavenly yeshiva. Lessons in Gan Eden. So in this story, Shmuel's father was guarding money for Yesomim, for orphans. The problem is he passed away, and Shmuel wasn't around. Shmuel never found out where this money is, and people just suspect the worst, and they started calling Shmuel basically a thief, for using the money of the orphans because he never paid it back. because he didn't have it. He didn't know where it was. So Shmuel's kind of desperate. So he makes this trip into the other world, and anyway, they don't let him in initially. He says, "I'm here to see my father." They say, there's a lot of fathers. He says, Abba bar Abba, the father, the son of father. They say, now there's a lot of Abba bar Abbas who, give us better. So he finally says, Abba avur de Shmuel. And they said, okay, fine, come in. On the way in, he notices that Levy is sitting on the outside. They don't let him in. So he says, why are you on the outs? Why are you not let into the yeshiva shalmaila? So he tells him, there was some politics back in the day. Who becomes the Rosh Hashiva? There's always it's like getting when there's a company that has to give somebody a promotion, and it's like two people who are equally qualified, but they have to pick one. So I guess the story is that they picked Rabbi Ephes and they bypassed Levy. So Levy felt maybe slighted or bypassed, so he didn't feel like he needed to go in and to sit in the yeshiva of Rabbi Ephes. But in the meantime, Rabbi Ephes felt that he was being disrespected by the lack of Levi's attendance. So it hurt Rabbi Ephes' feelings. So because he had hurt Rabbi Ephes' feelings, I guess you could say, Mida Keneged Mida, measure for measure, he had to stay out of Gan Eden, of the yeshiva above, and that's why he wasn't out. Basically, Shmuel told him why he was there. He got the information from his father where the money was, but he also said, you guys have to let Levy in, because they told Shmuel that you're very honorable. They hold from you over here. So he says, if you hold from me, then let Levy in. So yeah, I guess that's the lesson. The lesson is that we there are consequences for our actions. They may not be always felt in this world, but they're affected in the next world. And the problem is that sometimes it feels like the next world isn't sensitive to the reality of how difficult decisions we face to make are here. And that's why you need a tzaddik like Shmuel to advocate for you. So this might be a precedent for the idea of having like a good defense attorney, not literally, but figuratively speaking, like a tzaddik, to petition on your behalf. Okay, that's number 9. Number 10, the final one, is important people like Shmuel are different. The Gemara, the point the Gemara wants to bring out in that story about Shmuel is that one of the things, for example, his father told him is that you're going to die soon. So it would seem that they know what's going on. I mean, how would he have that information unless the dead really know what's going on? So the Gemara answers that that Shmuel is different. Why? Kiven the chashiv kalmei machrizi, because he's a very important person. Machrizi panu makayim. Maybe Shmuel is so important that there was a hachraza, there was a kind of alert to let people know, okay, make way, because a big soul is coming into Gan Eden soon, and his name is Shmuel. So in other words, it could be that, like, you know how you get like the New York Times sends you a wrap-up or summary of some of the big, most major news items. So it could be that the souls have some equivalent of that, meaning that's a metaphor. But like spiritually speaking, they get a few things, but they don't get all the details. So just because they know a few things, don't make the mistake and think they know everything. They know very little, But they know what they know. There's a reason for what they know. Anyway, that's number 10. Thank you for tuning in, and have a good day or good night.